All right, decision-making students. Today we're going to be talking about using weighted sums and averages. All right, let's get started. Tommy's taking an advanced mathematical decision-making class in college. His grades were 75, 80, 95, 68, 59, and 87. What is his overall average grade? Well, the answer is a 77.3 because what we did was we took all of his grades and then we just added them all up and then we divided by 6 to get 77.3. Now, that would be okay. That would be great if all of his scores were weighted the same. But let's say, for example, this 75 was a homework grade, and then this, we'll just say this 87, this was a test grade. All right. By adding them all up and dividing by 6, you're basically saying that the homework grade counts as much as the test grade, which we know is not to be true. So what happens is we have to put in a multiplier in order to kind of even out the percentages and even out the grades. And so this is what it looks like. Something that looks like this, where tests make up 40% of an overall grade, final exam 25, homework 15, classwork 15. And of course we have Tommy here making these type of scores. So these are the scores that he made. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this information, I'm going to put it right next to each category just for organizational standpoint. Now I'm writing with my mouse, so if it seems a little off, then I apologize. Let's see, that's an 80, 95. Like I said before, I'm just writing everything up here just to get everything organized. And so here's all of our grades that we've had so far. So the very first thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to calculate the mean for each category. And so I'm going to write this off to the side, kind of in a chart format. The M stands for mean. All right, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the mean for my tests, which means I'm going to add them together and divide them by 2 because I have 2 of them, and I get 67. Now the final exam score, there's really nothing to average there. It's going to be an 68. The 80 and 95 is going to be an 87.5, and then the classwork is going to be 87. All right, so my first step is completed. Now it's time for my second, which is multiply each mean by the category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each percentage of each category and multiply it by my mean, which is 0.4. Now, of course, you have to convert to a decimal, so please make sure you do that. This would be 0.25, and this would be 0.15, and this would be 0.15. And I'm going to get what I would call, just for a lack of a better word, a raw score. So here's my raw score I have here. All right, and so 67 times 0.4. Okay, so I multiplied and I got all this information here, which brings me into my third step, and that is add all the, what I would call, raw scores. So add all the raw scores up to find the overall grade. So I'm going to add all this information up, and when I do that, 26.8 plus 17 plus 13.1 plus 13.1, I get a score of 70. There is my answer. So what was his overall grade? He had a 70, because we had to multiply all of the different values into each score, because not every assignment weighed the same, so we had to multiply it by the percentage to get the overall score. Okay, now moving on. And of course the formula, if you'd like to see this, there it is. I took 40% multiplied by the test average, 25 times final exam average, so on and so forth. You can pause the video and look at it further if you'd like. So a typical question to a teacher, and that is, John received another 100 for his homework assignment. Why doesn't his grade go up? Well, if you notice, if I was to do the mean for each category here, the mean for the test would be an 80, quizzes would be an 86, homework would be a 100, and then the classwork grade would be a 96.5. Okay, and he makes another 100 for his homework grade. Now, here's the thing that I want you to observe. He already has an average of 100 for all of his homework grades. And so what that means is if you were to factor in yet another 100 into his grades, that does not change his mean score, which means his grade will not go up. And that actually goes for all of his categories. Let's look at the test, for example. His tests, he has an overall score of an 80. So what that means is if he was to make another 80, his grade would not go up on a test. He has to do something either greater or less than his mean scores for each category. So if he wanted his grade to go up in the test category, I would say he needs to do something better than probably an 85 or higher. That'll make his grade move up. The higher the jump, the higher his test score, obviously the higher his overall grade's going to be. Now, the last example we're going to use is answering this question. All we're going to do is answer this question. That is, Tim, what grade must Tim make on his final exam to have an overall grade of the class of 91? Now, this is something that teachers deal with a lot, especially around the final exam time. So, in order to figure that out, what we have to do is, once again, we have to find what I call the raw score. Okay, which means I take the 40%, multiply by 85, take the 25%, this, and we have got to get an overall raw score because our goal is to figure out, okay, what must we multiply this by? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply this real quick. And there's the scores I got. And so the question is, what grade must Tim make in order to get a 91? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the raw scores and I'm going to add all of them together, and I end up getting 71.6. Okay? So as of right now, he has 71.6 points with all of his scores. Now, we want to get a 91. So what we have to do is we have to find the difference between the 91 and the 71.6. So 91 minus 71.6, and when we subtract this, we get an answer of 19.4. Okay, so when we subtract, we get 19.4. Now, we have to then take, this is where it might get a little confusing. We have got to take the 19.4 and we've got to divide it by 20%. So we get 19.4 and divide it by 20. And so when we divide 19.4 by 20, we get an answer of 97. In fact, I think it's a 0.97. And so basically what this 0.97 is our score to figure out what he needs to make, which is he has to make a 97 on his final exam in order to have an overall score of a 91. Okay, so just in review, what you have to do is you had to find out all the raw scores and then subtract the raw scores by the number that he wants, and then you would take the difference, here's my difference, and divide it by the percentage, which is 20%. Well, in this case, you just leave it as a 20. I know it may sound confusing, but you do. And then, of course, after you divide it out, whatever you get, that is the score that you need to get. And so if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for watching.